What is the scariest unsolved mystery you know about? Story 1. Attention. Serious tag. Notice. Jokes, puns, and off-topic comments are not permitted. In any comment, parent or child. Parent comments that aren't from the target group will be removed along with their child replies. Report comments that violate these rules. Posts that have few relevant answers within the first hour, and posts that are not appropriate for the serious tag will be removed. Consider doing an AMA request instead. Thanks for your cooperation and enjoy the discussion. I am a bot, and this action was performed automatically. Story 2. In 2006, 23-year-old Robert Hornbeck, a soldier at Fort Benning, went to Savannah to visit family. He went out bar hopping with a friend. His dad came to pick him up at 3 a.m. His dad called and Robert answered, saying, "Dad, I'm on the stairs." Then the call disconnected. He was missing for the next 10 days. In the nearby DeSoto Hilton Hotel, guests started complaining about a terrible smell whenever the air conditioning came on. A worker went down to check the problem and found Hornbeck's body inside the air conditioning unit. He wasn't staying at the hotel. Somehow he got inside the hotel through an employee entrance door that was supposedly locked, but there was no sign of forced entry. He would have crossed a dark, empty ballroom and gone through a maintenance door. He climbed up 13 steps so steep they were like a ladder. From there, he went down a dark hallway next to the AC unit. He'd have seen 3 panels that opened into the unit, a large one and 2 smaller ones. The police actually checked inside the large one, figuring no one could have gone in the smaller ones. When they later checked again, they found Hornbeck had climbed through the middle door, which was only 14 inches wide. Cold air would have immediately blasted him when he opened it. He crawled down through the duct and somehow got past rotating fan blade to crawl Eve further inside the unit. He was eventually hit by another fan blade and died inside the unit. The police found no signs of foul play, and it was ruled an accident. Answer. Reminds me of a buddy of mine who was at Epcot in Orlando tipsy off his jerk. He got into an area in the Italy region, I believe that was marked employees only, and was behind a bunch of roped off sections. 2 of the doors were locked, but a 3rd was unlocked. It was a slide, so he decided to go down it. That's when he got stuck and figured out it was actually a laundry chute, and the laundry had piled halfway up the chute. He then fell asleep and no one could find him, obviously, and his phone was off. Park security was looking for him with his party for 45 minutes, until he finally woke up and turned his phone on. He called his wife but didn't explain where she was. She used her phone locator and he told them he was stuck in a slide. So finally park security figured it out. I'm pretty sure he's never allowed in Epcot again, LOL. Story 3. Someone I knew in high school was at a party. Reports showed that people saw him leaving the house around 1:30 a.m. and was walking home. It was about a 10-minute walk. However, he was never heard from again. A lot of people were questioned. The party had 12 or 13 people attending the party, and he was the one of 3 people who left at the same time. Everyone was 16-20. They say he only had 2 or 3 drinks. He didn't like to get tipsy and never had more than that. No other substances were believed to be at the party. 3 days later, his body appears in a pond in a different neighborhood in the opposite direction of his home. From where the party was and where his body showed up, he had to cross a main street and walk about half a mile, unless he walked through backyards. The morning his body was found, there was a report that 2 people had stood outside the pond the morning before, and the morning of his body floating to the top of the pond. There was some time spent trying to figure out who those two people were, but nothing came of it. It was ruled an accidental passing. One of the people at the party was a close friend's sister. She's talked about it. She said she truly doesn't know what happened. She just knows that he wasn't remotely tipsy, barely tipsy. There's no reason for him to walk in that direction, and she has no idea who might have been at the pond in the morning. Story 4. On June 4th, 2010, 7-year-old Kieran Horman was taken to Skyline Elementary School in Portland, Oregon, by his stepmother Terry, who then stayed with him while he attended a science fair. Terry stated that she left the school at around 8:45 a.m. and that she remembered seeing Kieran walking down the hall to his first class. He never showed up in his first class, a math class, and was instead marked as absent that day. His stepmother went and did some errands and came home to post the photos of her son at the science fair. At 3:30 p.m., Terry and her husband, Kanye, walked with their daughter, Kiara, to the bus stop to meet Kieran. The bus driver told her he had not boarded the bus. Terry called the school only to be told Kieran had not been seen since early that day and was marked as absent. An exhaustive search has found no trace of him. Story 5. The case of Todd Geeb, a guy who was at a party with his friends and left to walk home alone. His friends got some weird phone calls from him after he left, and then he was missing for a few weeks, I think. Then, weeks later, he was found standing upright in the middle of a lake, like with the water up to his shoulders. From what I remember, the cause of passing wasn't drowning, so he must have been placed there. Honestly, so fudge creepy. Story 6. Brandon Lawson. He disappeared in the middle of nowhere on a highway near San Angelo, Texas in 2013. He made a 911 call, out of breath and running, clearly being chased. I believe the recording is on YouTube. The call suddenly cuts off and there's been no sign of him since. The 911 call is spooky. You can tell the dude is afraid. Answer. Brandon's brother has given some recent interviews where he says that his brother had a problem with meth, and that during the phone calls while he was trying to find him, the brother thought he was in a state of substances-fueled psychosis. I think it's far more likely that Brandon thought he was being chased, but it was really just the meth talking to him. The fact that no trace of his body was found is sobering, but there's wild hogs out in that part of the world. Hogs can digest every part of a human body except for the hair and teeth, and a pack of 16 hogs can destroy a 200-pound body in 8 minutes. They cannot digest shoes and clothing, but once they are done with the body, the shoes and clothing will be ripped to shreds, ready to blow away with any breeze, and being tore up plus washed through porcine digestive tracts. Those bits of garments will rot away even faster than they already were. Story 7. I don't know if it's the scariest, but I was always creeped out by the Westfield Watcher. New family moves into a new house. They start receiving letters from the Watcher saying their family has been watching the house for generations. The letters start getting worse and worse with threats to the children. It's a disturbingly fascinating story, and I've been following since it started. Many people believe the father was sending the letters himself because the mortgage payment was too high and was trying to finesse his way out of the contract. But who really knows for sure? Answer. I think it was the family. Can't remember the exact details, but the family's lawyer tried to get Ellie to tell the family in advance of any investigative methods they were going to use. I think it was an Amityville situation where either they planned all along to make money from a creepy hoax, but people suspected them immediately, because it's no longer the 1970s, a few years after The Exorcist freaked everyone out, or they got in over their heads with the house purchase, and they came up with this idea after. Story 8. The Case of the Boy in the Box. It's not necessarily scary, but every time I see photos of that boy, I get the most uncomfortable feeling in my stomach. My heart starts racing every time. It makes no sense to me. There are far worse cases involving children that don't bother me. I've seen terrible crime scene photos and live leak videos, etc. I've heard so many awful ways people have died and so many unsolved mysteries. I love everything true crime related. But something about seeing photos of that particular little boy versus other people, children, haunts me every time I see it. I actively avoid reading about, listening to people talk about this case. It's a shame it's not solved. All the evidence of what happened is there, they just can't definitively prove it. Story 9. Near the house I grew up in, a little girl, around 3-ish, went missing. Her mom ran inside to get the phone while her daughter was outside, came right back out, and she was gone. The older brother was in the house and didn't see anything. It was a matter of minutes, from what I remember. They eventually found the little girl's body long afterwards. It was during the 80s when science for investigating things was more limited, especially when it was long after the event had occurred. They never found the person responsible, and so never found the motive, knew any details or even exactly what happened. My aunt told me the story because she was good friends with the mother and at the house with her when it happened. I still think about that mother sometimes and wonder where she's at mentally with the whole thing. I can't even imagine a situation like that. Story 10. There was a terrorist organization in the mid-1980s in Luxembourg known as de Baumelaire, who set explosives on several public buildings, notably the police HQ and the Palace of Justice, as well as a European Council meeting, as well as the country's electrical infrastructure. To date, no one knows who was behind it, or exactly what they wanted, or why they stopped. Story 11. Kinda late to the party, but the Xavier Dupont de Ligons disappearance, after having eliminated his whole family. There was an episode about it on Netflix IRC. Fun fact, I was in the same class as one of the children when I was younger and met Xavier a few times. He even drove my sister to her football sessions, since she and Xavier's daughter were friends. Also, I lived 2 men away from their house when they discovered the bodies. Fun times added. Also, if some of you are interested in a few more details, I have some, and I could probably get my old class picture with Thomas if I go to my mother's. Story 12. 2008 Arushi Talwar takedown case. Not scary per se, but interesting in a whodunit sense. In a nutshell, 13-year-old girl found takedown in her bedroom by her mother in the morning. First, the blame came on to the male staff who was found to be missing for days post the takedown. He was then found takedown on the terrace 2 days later. Evidence and witnesses got tampered with the time and again. 1. First, some friends of the male staff members admitted to committing the 2 takedown under influence. They later testified that they were coerced. 2. One golf club of the father's was found missing. Later turned up cleaned and due to evidence tampering was made inadmissible in court. 3. The mother stated that when she woke up and found Arushi, the house was locked from the outside, meaning somebody had left the house and locked them in at some point. A female cook at the scene in the beginning, however, said this was not true and that the house was open when she reached. 4. One theory came about that there was a wet patch on Arushi's bed. The theory was that the parents had found the male staff member and Arushi in a compromising position and eliminated both in anger. This theory was debunked as well. The transcript of all the court proceedings are still in the public domain. The parents continued years and years of court rounds to find the murderer. They also went to jail for a few years. No final verdict was finally met with. Answer: Dad did it. He was Fudge's daughter. The male staff caught them. He eliminated the girl in a rage of self-loathing, or she threatened to tell, and then the staff member to keep him quiet. So many of these mysteries are obvious when you add a common yet R-rated topic like child molestation, prostitution, child trafficking, substances usage or substances selling, or someone being gay trans. People think these things are rare, but they're not. Also, we're talking about a rare event, a crime. Most people go their entire lives not take down anyone. The explanation may involve something a little less than ordinary. Story 13. For me, it's the Tamam Shud case. In 1943, an unidentified man is found deceased on a beach in Australia, and with a scrap of paper with the phrase Tamam Shud, meaning it's over, in his pocket. The scrap was linked to a book called The Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam, which had a secret, and since indecipherable, message in the back of the book. They have recently exhumed the body and are in the process of analyzing and comparing the DNA to any known relatives. So this may soon be solved. The Tamam Shud case, aka the Somerton Man. Story 14. Well, not a famous one, but every time I went to my friend's house, we would play in the basement and we would hear a baby's cries. Asked him, he said he didn't know. Asked his parents, they just smile and seed. It was my imagination. That has creeped me out since. Story 15. Brandon Swanson case. He was driving home from a party and drove into a ditch. Got on the phone with his parents, who were unable to locate him. 45 minutes after them picking up, he yelled, "Oh shoot," and nobody has heard from him since. Answer: and then his car was found miles from where he was supposed to be, which can be explained by him getting lost and thinking he was on a road he wasn't on. But then, what happened to him? Also, I'm sorry, I've driven tipsy before, not very far at all, and am not happy about it, but I wasn't in a position to make good choices, young and thought I was so much better than others, and had friends I don't talk to anymore telling me I was fine to drive. But even in my state, I could tell where I was. They found him in the opposite direction of where he said he was IIRC. He was in at least a vaguely familiar area. How did he get that turned around and then end up in a ditch? The whole case is just so wild to me. Story 16. The Lake Bodom takedown in 1960. 3 teens were brutally beaten and stabbed to passing, and the one survivor was badly beaten and also stabbed. The survivor was arrested in 2004, but was found not guilty. Likely will never be solved due to the time passed. Story 17. The disappearance of Lisa Marie Young shattered my entire island, and we are all still looking for answers and an opportunity to bring her home, to reunite, or to rest in peace. I'm G. Podcast. It's 2002 and 21. Yo, Lisa was at the Jungle Exotic Cabaret Club downtown for her best friend Dallas Holly's 21st birthday. She had worked at the club for nearly 3 years and was well known there. A young man was parked outside in a dark red Jaguar and offered the group a lift to a house party. They party for some time. Lisa, A vegetarian gets hungry and can't find food that fits her diet at the party. The man with the Jaguar, Chris Adair, offers to give her a ride to a gas station, convenience store, or fast food place to pick up a snack. After some persuading, she goes with him. She contacts Dallas in the wee hours. His account stated that he told him the man wouldn't let her leave, and they are at a house she isn't familiar with on Bowen Road, which has hundreds of residential houses and commercial buildings. She wants to go and is super uncomfortable, and Chris will not drive her back. The fact that she didn't scream like hell was also a big whoa moment. Tells me she likely wasn't able to, as she was known to be really spirited. Or she was with someone she knew all along, and had moved to a place that she couldn't be heard indoors. Nobody ever sees her again, and it leaves a crater of negative space in the community where she used to be. Speculation is that the house on Bowen belonged to and substances trafficker and notorious local criminal William Willie Curry. There is also mention of a property at Nanaimo Lakes being a possible burial site belonging to the Firstel family, but this hasn't been proven. Rumor has it that she had been held against her will for intimacy purposes, then lost her life. Further rumors cite that a snuff film it was made. The investigation seemed really slow to get off the ground, with much public speculation that it was due to Lisa's First Nation lineage. There was speculation that she had run away to nearby cities of Vancouver or Victoria, but young ladies don't run away in the middle of the wee hours right after they sign a new lease and get a new job. The police did not seem concerned, but the family was in a frenzy to find her and afraid that Lisa had also fallen victim to prejudice against her heritage. An ineffective investigation by a possibly corrupt police force. The lead suspect for the longest time was Chris Adair, who was borrowing the family Jaguar, which was detailed thoroughly and sold off. The Adair family did not cooperate with police and threatened the young family legal action for defaming them. The family seemed to be more interested in saving their reputation than helping investigators. Chris then moved to Ontario, then moved out of the country to Turkey. My understanding is that controversy stalked him to his new location too, when Lisa's mother came upon Chris in a chance encounter. It was brief, she said, when she asked him to tell her where her daughter was. She recollects that he replied, "I can't." Then he paused, voice fading. "I'm sorry, I don't mean to disrespect your family." Lisa had just signed a lease for an apartment that she was excited about, and spoke often of it and her upcoming new job to her close-knit family, and was looking forward and making plans for her future. Her mama, Joanne, held vigils and lit a fire under the tail of police for years, but the whole incident aged her prematurely, and she tragically passed away in 2017 before she could find her daughter. I was barely 12 at the time, but I remember going to the used bookstore just feet away from the Jungle Club that she had begun the night at, and my brother holding my hand so tight and telling me, "Never go in there, even when you are old enough." A lady went missing from there. In reality, she went missing from wherever she placed her last phone call, but nobody knew that part yet. Everything was so hush-hush in the investigation that Lisa's family doubled down on the police, thinking that nothing was happening. They might have been right, because Lisa is still not home. It left a gaping maw in the community. Updates happen in the media. A vigil is still held for her to come home. And the Lights On for Lisa movement still happens yearly, with residents leaving porch lights and candles in the windows. Many, many questions left unanswered. She would be 40 this year. To search public criminal records, use the following: choose search, then search traffic, criminal, then search traffic, criminal. By then participant name, full names: Christopher William Adair, Brian Firstel, William Curry. Notice there are a few results that are restricted access. Answer: I grew up in the area and was probably around the same age as you when it happened. I lived in a rough neighborhood. Word on the street was that she was brought to the house of some unsavory characters. I think their last name was Curry, two brothers into criminal activity who were also police informants. There is a lot of human trafficking in Nanaimo. A lot. Especially targeting vulnerable women and girls, such as foster kids, First Nations, etc. The harbor city is heavy on the substances trade as well. Hell's Angels run half the city, if not more. Club bar owners, managers, etc., especially at that time in the 90s, were often dangerous predators. Rumor has it, Lisa never left the island, met with foul play, buried on what was, at the time, the property of one of the Coreys or their associates out in Cedar. To me, and the folks I knew, it was never a mystery. And yes, many people talked to police, but there were some connections and corruptions there, politics, etc., and nothing was done about it. Again, this is all put together based on what I've heard over the years. I am not a direct witness. Story 18. The Legend of Lake Lanier in Georgia. Over 500 people have died, with 200 of those since 1999. The lake was man-made in 1956, and they say they didn't move all the bodies out of the graves before flooding the town to make a lake. Many articles on the topic and the deaths over the years. Here's one. Story 19. When I was like 11, I was over my neighbor's house playing Resident Evil, and it got dark. So I had to run down his driveway and loop around from the street to come up my gravel driveway to the back of the house, because we didn't use the front door. Across the street is just straight woods, so fear was a little jacked up from the video game. Now the back of my house is sort of a porch-like area that is walled around with a screen door and the windows. The house is lit up, and there's a little moonlight. I walk up these old blue-painted steps to get to the screen door, and it's locked. I'm sitting there thinking like, shoot, how did my parents lock me out huh? So to my left, there's this side yard that is fenced and a deck that is connected to the porch. Then I hear my name from said side yard, Doug. To me, it sounded like my dad, so I answered, Dad, and didn't get any response. So I figure okay, I'll climb over the fence because the fence door was locked too for some reason. I get to the top and pushed myself. So I roll over the top, lifting myself with my arms, and I sort of fall onto the grill and make some noise. I keep it from falling over, and then look up to the yard and expect to see my father. But there's nothing. For some reason I'm chilling okay, that's weird, but maybe I'm just hearing things. I try the second screen door from the deck, and that's locked too. Then I hear it. Doug. Every hair on my body stood up. I slowly turned around, and my eyes immediately went to this huge tree, opposite of where I was on the other side of the yard. That was where the voice came from. Right to the crotch of the tree. It's dark, like the blackest black, and it seems like there's barely any moonlight now. Just the deck light over me. I can't make it out, but there's something in that tree looking at me like Condorish. I freak the fudge out and slam myself into the screen door, knocking it off its hinges and landing on all fours. I don't even look behind me. I run to the sliding door and it's locked. So I head to the window to the kitchen on the right and rip up the screen and leap through onto my back. I sprinted to the living room and hid under a coffee table until my mom came downstairs. IDK what happened that night. Anytime I hear something related to the Jersey Devil or skinwalkers, that memory comes back to me. This was in South Jersey. I'd like to believe I just imagined it. Story 20. Mass grave found in Liverpool of thousands of simple wooden coffins, stacked tightly in a cube shape. The dead were all adults, no children. The coffins were all removed pretty quickly after discovery, and not much more was ever discovered. The leading theory is that the deceased were Irish immigrants, and that the reason there were no children is that they would have been shipped off to Australia. Quite what caused the adult's demise isn't known. Also, special mention to the man in the pipe, also from Liverpool, a man in Victorian dress found lying inside a sealed-up pipe, with his head resting on a brick, as if he'd just climbed in and fallen asleep. Both stories have been covered by local folklorist Tom Slemon. Story 21. Who was the Zodiac? The whole thing is creepy. The ciphers eliminate each victim differently and such. He could still be alive and laughing at the police for not catching him. Upside is, he'd probably be too old to eliminate now. Answer, they got him like last year. He died, but there are some pretty funny things about him, considering the circumstances. Gary Post, presumed Zodiac, was a huge film buff, and he frequently commented and reviewed movies. When the Zac Efron Ted Bundy movie came out, Gary Post wrote a somewhat general review of the movie, finishing it with Ted Bundy is overrated. Another instance you can find online was a friend of Gary Post who posted essentially this on his Facebook page, accompanied by a picture of him and Gary. Last photo of old man Gary and I from my last visit before he passed. Zodiac. Story 22. The recent takedown in Atlanta, Georgia. A 40-year-old bartender got off work and went to walk her dog around 2 a.m. in the most popular park in Midtown. Her body is found stabbed over 50 times, disfigured, and mutilated with the word fat carved into her chest. She was found by her wife, who tracked her phone using Find My iPhone when she didn't come home. Her dog was also stabbed to passing. Despite this huge park being in the wealthy center of the city, all the surveillance cameras around the park did not work. Her body was only found 250 ft from a main road, and probably a 3-minute walk to a hub of bars and restaurants open late. In interviews with the wife, she talks about paying off debts using the GoFundMe donations. That's the only hint of any possible explanation to me. No other evidence was found and no additional surveillance footage has been recovered. This happened in July 2021 and still no information. Some people think official sources are holding out, and that the word slut was carved, not fatty, and that the body was dismembered. I had dog sat for a childhood friend on the corner from where the victim was. Takedown just 3 days prior, and had taken her dog to the park at the exact spot where the victim was takedown when it was dark. I got creepy vibes and ran back. All around so scary. Story 23. Cindy James was a 44-year-old nurse who began to experience troubling moments of harassment that began with creepy calls to scary notes that continually escalated over 7 years to violent attacks. However, authorities didn't believe her, despite numerous troubling accounts that included James being found strangled with nylon, drugged and stripped on the side of the road, and other terrible acts of abuse that even included a house fire while guests were staying over. Cindy James ultimately disappeared, and her body was found dead weeks later near an abandoned house, hog-tied with nylon around her neck. Her passing was ultimately determined to be from an overdose of morphine, which caused police to frustratingly rule it as a tragic end, even though she had been tied up and had previous reports of being drugged. Story 24. Tristan Burbach, 13. This is some truly awful shoot. Tristan was walking home through a local park and was brutally taken down. What's weird about this is that not too long before his takedown, he was happy and healthy and petting an elderly lady's dog. He then walked down a dark tunnel and was attacked. When a young girl found his body, it was laying over a grate that led to the sewer, and the girl described the hands reaching up from the grate and grabbing his body. Tristan was stabbed and had evidence of chunks of his flesh being eaten. When the police checked the sewer, they found nothing. What's so awful about this is the idea that a random man jumped out of the sewer, attacked, and then ate parts of Tristan and got away.